Hello there, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock Cairo local time. Thanks for watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest in Gaza. Hamas has released the names of 3 Israeli detainees who are set to be released on Saturday, February 1st. The detainees are Ofer Calderon, Keith Siegel and Yarden Baibas. Israeli authorities have previously expressed concerns about the safety of Shiri Baibas and her 2 sons, aged 4 years and 10 months. The Palestinian Commission for Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs and the Palestinian Prisoners Society have announced that 90 Palestinian prisoners are scheduled to be released from Israeli prisons tomorrow as part of the 4th phase of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. The 2 organizations confirmed the release of 81 long-term detainees and 9 individuals serving life sentences. This follows the 3rd phase of prisoner releases under the Gaza ceasefire deal, which freed 110 detainees, including 32 life sentence prisoners, 48 with various sentences, and 30 minors. Palestinian detainees freed under the Gaza truce deal have been greeted by a cheering crowd as they arrived in Ramallah in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. Buses arrived carrying some of the 110 Palestinian detainees to be freed as part of the phased agreement that ended more than 15 months of war in the coastal territory on January 19th. On Thursday, Hamas freed 3 Israeli and 5 Thai detainees in Gaza, while Israel began releasing 110 Palestinian prisoners after delaying the process in response to the swarming crowds at one of the detainee handover points. Egyptian delegations have gathered in front of Rafah crossing, expressing their rejection and denounced calls to displace Palestinians. The delegations also expressed support for Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who earlier emphasized that the displacement of Palestinians is an injustice that Egypt will not participate in. President el-Sisi reiterated that Cairo will not tolerate such calls, stressing that there is no solution other than the 2-state solution. Our sister news channel, Al Qahira News, reports that 10 fuel trucks entered Gaza from Egypt. These trucks are part of a larger aid convoy of 290 trucks carrying medical and food supplies. The aid has entered through the Kerem Abu Salem and Al Auja crossings, preparing for distribution inside Gaza. Crowds of Gazans have gathered in front of European Hospital in Gaza's Qnews to welcome freed Palestinian prisoners. Upon release, one of the freed detainees said he salutes the resilience of Gaza, claiming it will pave the way for liberation of more detainees. Palestinians in Gaza have rejoiced at the return of released Palestinian detainees. The released prisoners were carried on shoulders, cheered and paraded through the gathered crowd. The detainee swaps are part of a key ceasefire agreement aimed at ending the deadliest and most destructive war in Gaza. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that whoever dares to harm Israeli detainees will pay the price. He added that the sight of their handover was shocking and warned of death for anyone harming the detainees. Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz said they had ordered a delay in the release of the detainees. The Prime Minister's office later said that the mediators had committed to ensuring the safe passage of detainees in future handovers. Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said that Israel would return to the fight once the first phase of the deal concludes in early March. Smotrich continues his attacks on the Gaza ceasefire deal, calling it catastrophic and dangerous to Israeli security, emphasizing that he will not allow the war to end without achieving its objectives. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric has called for the immediate evacuation of 2,500 children from Gaza for medical treatment. Dujarric added that the UN Palestinian Relief Agency, UNRWA, is continuing to deliver assistance and services in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. The World Health Organization has reported that more than 12,000 patients are waiting for medical evacuations and had hoped the process could be accelerated under the ceasefire that began on January 19th. Now, with more for us, we cross over to the newsroom where Salma Marwan is there. Salma.
Thank you, Mark. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Ashraf Al-Ashri, Al-Ahram newspaper managing editor. Mr. Ashraf, thank you so much for joining us on Q News. And first off, what significance does the gathering at Rafah crossing hold in the broader context of Egypt's stance characterized by the citizen disapproval on Palestinian displacement?
And to the viewers, this is a political symbolic message by the political powers and the civil society and all civil society powers in Egypt expressing their stance in front of the crossing, the Rafah crossing, that Egypt is supporting the Palestinian population and will not allow the relocation of the Gaza population outside of their homeland. Egypt will not have the Palestinian cause killed. It is a message to Israel and also to the United States of America, and choosing the location of the Rafah crossing is symbolic to express that this is the only way that we reach the Gazan population. It is a high degree of resilience and solidarity and the Egyptian opposition to any the displacement, and this will, and I think we will see this in different governorates across Egypt to express the collective rejection and opposition to displace the Gaza population. It is we're going to see the echo of this message at the international community level and Israel and the United States.
Now, sir, how has Egypt's historical role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict shaped its current position on Palestinian displacement, especially in the context of Rafah?
Today, and what we see today is a continuation of the Egyptian support march for 77 years. We have been to war more than once for Palestine. We paid a very precious price defending the Palestinian territories and the Palestinian populations. We have been incubators politically and economically, and with the president Sisi assuming office, the Palestinian issue rose once again as a high priority after its decline following the tensions in the Arab world following the Arab Spring. Egypt is now working to establish the Palestinian cause at the forefront of the Arab issues. Egypt has had 5 rounds of mitigating the conflicts between Hamas and Israel for 5 times. Now we're working as mediators in cooperation with Qatar and the US, sending humanitarian aids and still providing all means of support to the Palestinian population. For the past 15 months, Egypt has stressed that it is fully aware of the schemes of the Palestinian displacement. We have clarified our stance towards this displacement since the following day. For October 7th, we have warned that what is happening in the Gaza Strip is an attempt to evacuate the population and turning the Gaza Strip into an uninhabitable area. Egypt is always defending its fundamentals for the establishment of an independent Palestinian state in accordance with the historic principles of Egypt.
Now, sir, sorry for cutting in, but building more on this, how do Egypt's delegations and citizens at Rafah affect the broader perception of its leadership within the Arab world and among international actors as well?
We are witnessing today tens of thousands of Egyptians raising the Egyptian flag, as well as signs and to oppose the displacement of Palestinians is a message to the international community to embrace the idea of the rejection of the displacement on a wide range. This has been clarified by President Sisi during the past few days, which provoked other international stance. We have found France and other European states opposing the schemes to displace and the Trump scheme to relocation of the Gaza population. Now these protests and demonstration peacefully in front of the Rafah crossing is an announcement of the Egyptian people stance, and we will witness during the next few days Arab cities expressing the same stance led by the Egyptian proactive situation here.
Now, what role does Egypt play in mediating humanitarian aid to Gaza through Rafah, and how does this align with its political and diplomatic interests?
Egypt has achieved a great victory opening the Rafah crossing today after a month of closure. The governor of northern Sinai announced the opening of the Rafah crossing today. 50 trucks of fuels will be passed today, in addition to a number of trucks of humanitarian basics, and also receiving 50 injured Palestinians will be transported from Gaza to Egypt tomorrow morning to receive proper health care in Arish and in the Mansoura governorate. We have a medical plan drafted by Egypt to receive hundreds of Palestinian injured on a daily basis to provide proper medical and health care. In addition to the flow of humanitarian aid among food and water and fuel and medical supplies, and this will be supported by the opening of the Rafah crossing, which is a victory against the Israeli attempts to hinder the access of aid to the Gaza Strip.
Now, sir, building on the third round of the exchange process that took place yesterday and the delay that took place from the Israeli side, what are the key concerns raised by Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu regarding future releases, and how do they affect the continuation of the ceasefire?
Qatar next Monday, we should start a new round of the preparations for phase 2 and 3 in accordance with what has been agreed upon during the past 10 days. And there is a US determination conveyed to the Egyptian and Qatari mediators to continue with the phase 2 and 3. And obviously there is the US pressures, but also a lot of concerns, as Smotrich, the Minister of Finance in the Israeli government, is working to stop the negotiations for phase 2 and 3 and returning back to war. This will be depending on what Netanyahu does. Is he going to respond to the far right pressures, or are they gonna agree and go forward with the phase 2 and 3 with the US pressures?
Now, sir, sorry for cutting in,
Well,
but in light of
now.
the fact that the fourth round of the exchange process will be taking place tomorrow, what are your expectations regarding this? Will it go smoothly, or will we witness delays like last night?
And yesterday was discussed with between the Israeli and Palestinian sides. There will be no show of force by Hamas once again, and Netanyahu requested that there is a fast release of the hostages, as well as the fast release of detainees on the Israeli side from the Aufur prison. And I think Hamas and Jihad received a message from the mediator for a fast release without any show of power or any delays, so that Netanyahu and Israel do not have an excuse to hold off the release of detainees. This solved a lot of disagreements, and Hamas stressed that they will not hinder or delay the release of the hostages tomorrow. One of the hostages to be released tomorrow has the US nationality.
Now, sir, looking at the wider picture, what does the exchange of Palestinian and Israeli detainees mean for the broader peace process in the region?
Any sort of understanding and implementing the 3 phases of the ceasefire with the US pressure on Israel and the help of of Qatar and Egyptian mediators. This will be followed by a second and third phase of hostages and detainees exchange, and then we will reach the final phase of the second day in the Gaza Strip. The PLO has good aspiration and societal and consensus to bring peace by independent individuals to take over the control of the Gaza Strip for in the third phase after the exchange of hostages, and this will depend on Netanyahu if he does not make any excuses to continue the fight, as he will in this case cooperate with the mediators and with the US to implement the third phase as planned, conditional that provided that US pressures Netanyahu and the Israeli government to not create any new obstacles.
Now, sir, I want to ask you about the impact from the provocative statements from Netanyahu's far-right wing parties, Smotrich and Ben Gvir. What's the impact of this on the continuity of the ceasefire, since they view it as a surrender?
There are a lot of concerns regarding these statements that they will have a negative impact, and that Netanyahu might actually give in to the pressures of Smotrich, and as he fears his coalition and his party, that Netanyahu might give in, stops at the conclusion of the first phase and then continues the war. Smotrich is now threatening of continuing the fight after concluding the first phase of the deal. Will that actually take place? I don't think the US administration will allow that, because the Trump administration wants to succeed with the three phases of the agreement. They say that this agreement is the credit of this is only to Trump, and he will not allow the collapse of this agreement.
Now, sir, tomorrow the first medical evacuation will also take place of 50 Palestinians that need medical care. What are your expectations regarding this process? Will it go as smoothly as well?
Will go smoothly. There is a consensus with the European Union. The European Union will provide buses and special convoys to the transportation of 50 Palestinians and their loved ones from the Dar Shifa hospital in the Gaza Strip. The European Union is coordinating with the Egyptian side with all of the supplies possible and ambulances to receive the injured in the Arish hospital to receive treatment. It is fully coordinated and it will go very smoothly. Egypt is well prepared with hospitals and ambulances and medics to facilitate the movement and the transportation of these 50 Palestinians to.
Now, sir, regarding UNRWA, Israel is currently working on obstructing its UNRWA's efforts, and France and Germany and Britain, they expressed opposition to this. Can this have an impact?
The European stance now is very positive and saving the day in Gaza and rejecting the Trump scheme even to displace the Gaza population. I think the European stance is contradicting with the US stance. We have a positive European stance to support the Palestinian population to not go back to the war once again. And I think that the European Union is participating in the monitoring of the Rafah crossing on the Palestinian side. And I think they align with the Arab and Egyptian stance to solve a lot of issues on the political and negotiation level.
Now, sir, from your point of view, why did Hamas characterize this exchange process as a victory for Palestinians?
Hamas achieved some positive outcomes because they rejected to compromise without the Israeli party or the Israeli party compromising as well. They had the target of eliminating Hamas and they failed, which led to Netanyahu accepting the terms of Hamas, and always Hamas and Israel, they both compromised to reach this point and reach an understanding of a three-phase agreement. And there is no complete victory to Israel or Hamas. They both made some progress and compromised to reach this point.
Now, sir, to what extent did this exchange process indicate Netanyahu's political failure?
This deal caused a lot of casualties on the or losses on the Israeli side. Netanyahu thought that he would have some popularity after achieving some political or military goals in Gaza. His popularity declined massively after taking the deal with Hamas, as he lost a lot in the Israeli internal affairs, and he does not have the support he had before. he is in a very tough position, and he's now receiving guarantees and military support from Trump to expand the war with Iran during the upcoming period.
From Cairo, that was Ashraf Al-Ashri, Al-Ahram newspaper managing editor. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News. And now for further analysis, joining us from Cairo as well is International Relations Specialist Dr. Muhammad Osman to discuss the latest developments. Dr. Osman, thank you so much for joining us on Q News. And first off, what significance does the gathering at Rafah crossing hold in the broader context of Egypt's stance on Palestinian displacement?
Thank you for having me, Salma. This spectacular scene we are seeing at the moment in front of the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing rather reflects that the Egyptian stance is unchangeable, immovable. It's an immovable object. It's an unstoppable force, and it was something that will never change, no matter how much pressure is applied to Egypt. In actuality, Egypt, through today's the Egyptian people, through today's humongous demonstrations in Rafah, are saying that the will to reject the will and the decision to reject these designs and sinister plans of displacement are not only the will of the Egyptian leadership or the Egyptian government or President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, it is the will of the Egyptian people and state. And that what the Egyptian government is doing and the Egyptian political leadership is doing is basically reflecting the will and the urges and the core beliefs of the people. Egypt has been historically committed to the Palestinian cause throughout its history. Since 1948 and even before that, Egypt was committed to supporting Palestinian statehood vis-a-vis Zionist Israeli aggression and expansion. Egypt has fought several wars in order to, for the sake of the Palestinian cause, and Egypt also, in peace times, was one of the main proponents of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. And now Egypt once again stands at center stage as a bulwark of defending the Palestinian rights to continued existence on their land, let alone statehood, and that they not be subjected to forced displacement and ethnic cleansing, because we have to term things very precisely and accurately so that we know exactly what we are dealing with. We are dealing with a call for an act of ethnic cleansing, which is a war crime, a crime against humanity, and a war crime in accordance with international law. So now the Egyptian people have taken to the streets and went to the Rafah crossing to send this very strong message that the Egyptian leadership is not on its own, that the Egyptian leadership is backed by over 100 million Egyptians who utterly reject the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, not only because of our solidarity and our commitment towards our Palestinian brethren, but also because this is considered a direct threat to Egyptian national security. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, during his press conference the other day with President Ruto of Kenya, made it clear that this is unacceptable, and that Egypt will never be a party in applying this form of oppression on the Palestinian people.
Now, shedding more light on Egypt's actions at Rafah strategic location, how do they serve as a barometer of its diplomatic stance on the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Egypt has led all the mediation efforts since the beginning of this conflict, and also has been part of the peace process, as we have said before, and also part of the Palestinian reconciliation process. So Egypt is an integral part of the Palestinian seed, whether the Israelis like it or not, and this is a fact that is there to stay. And now Egypt, with what's going on the border crossing, Egypt has been focused since the beginning of this conflict on facilitating the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip in order to save the people of Gaza from starvation and utter suffering. However, when the Israelis invaded the Palestinian side of Rafah and took over the border crossing and basically vandalized it and shot it from the Palestinian side, this substantially decreased the amount of aid that goes into the Palestinian Gaza Strip. And of course, this was part of the genocidal strategy of the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu. So now the focus is back on Rafah, especially with the potential opening of the Rafah border crossing. Palestinian wounded Palestinians under the administration of Palestinian officials and not Israeli officials. The Israelis are supposed to displacement of the Palestinian people.
Now, speaking of Egyptian delegations, how does the presence of Egyptian delegations at Rafah shape Cairo's role in the larger diplomatic negotiations surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, the groups of people that are present right now on the Rafah border crossing represent a variety of Egyptian political parties and civil society organizations and social forces. So they basically represent a multitude of segments in Egyptian society, if not all of them. And the message here is clear, that the entirety of the Egyptian people support the leadership against in their bid to prevent the displacement of the Palestinians. And this will only strengthen Egypt's role as a mediator, as a credible mediator in the peace process, and a facilitator as well, because it builds our credibility. It reflects our utter and stellar commitment to the Palestinian cause and to the foundational principles of the Palestinian cause. And those are the founding of a Palestinian state on the borders of June 4th, 1967, with its capital in East Jerusalem, and also consisting of the West Bank, the entirety of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and also safeguarding the right to return of the Palestinians abroad, not displacing the Palestinians who remain in the occupied territories. So Egypt is committed to that, and the president of Egypt has made it clear that Egypt will never back down from this commitment. This is something that stems from our moral commitment to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and also stems from our commitment to our own national security. Israeli expansionism in this manner, especially in areas such as Gaza, will threaten and does threaten Egyptian national security, and the Egyptian president did say that very clearly the day before yesterday. So I believe that it will only build Egypt's credibility, and now it is the United States' turn to be a responsible player, to respond to our gestures, to our genuine gestures of attempting to find a peaceful solution to this conflict, and also halting this current genocidal war, or maintaining at least the ceasefire that is preventing further genocide and ethnic annihilation of the people of Palestine. Over 60,000 people have died in Gaza in 15 months, Salma, and this is an understatement. The actual numbers might even be much larger. The Gaza Strip has been turned into an uninhabitable piece of land. They utterly destroyed and wiped Gaza off the map. So now the time is right to focus on maintaining the ceasefire, on finishing the detainee exchange deal, and also rebuilding and reconstructing Gaza, not emptying Gaza from its population. Such irresponsible, dumb statement made by President Trump cannot be accepted and cannot be endorsed. And not only Egypt rejects that, Jordan rejects that, and even some prominent European countries like Germany, like France, they oppose that. And before that, even the Biden administration, when they proposed the idea of displacing the Palestinians at the beginning of the war, the entirety of the Arab world and the Islamic world, as well as Russia and China and most of the European countries.
Yes, but sir, speaking specifically of Trump's statements, how do Egypt's actions at Rafah reflect broader regional power dynamics?
It reflects that Egypt is a prominent regional power that will have a say in what goes on in Palestine, that it's not up to the Americans to decide the fate of the Palestinian people. This is not acceptable to the Egyptian leadership, and the Egyptian leadership has displayed its ability to play and project its own power diplomatically and peacefully of its own weight and political power and weight. So this is basically what Egypt has been doing. And how this will affect regional dynamics, I think it will cement the Egyptian position, and it will garner support from other prominent regional actors in the Arab world, or at least that's what we hope to see. However, whether it does or it doesn't, Egypt at the end of the day has foundational principles, has established red lines, and this came in the words of the president himself previously, and those red lines will not be crossed no matter what the circumstances are.
Indeed, sir. Egypt has also been standing at the forefront of humanitarian efforts. And from here, I would like to ask you, in what ways do Egypt affect the humanitarian aid efforts in Gaza, and what role does this play in its regional influence?
70%, Salman, remember that number, of all the aid that has entered Gaza over the past 15 months was from Egypt. 70% from the Egyptian government, the Egyptian state, and the Egyptian private sector, and Egyptian civil society, and even ordinary Egyptian citizens. This is 70% of the huge amounts of aid, humanitarian aid that went there was actually Egyptian. The remaining 30% was the rest of the world, including some of the richest countries in the world in East and West. So this should tell you the integral and pivotal role Egypt is playing in the humanitarian support of the Palestinian people. And also Egypt has committed to be involved in the reconstruction and the rebuilding of the infrastructure of Gaza, along, of course, with other regional and international prominent actors. However, none of this can actually materialize or happen unless the Trump administration backs down and puts the trajectory of resolving this crisis back into its proper tracks. And that is, as I said before, a ceasefire, a detainee exchange, and the reconstruction, and the beginning of an actual serious peace process to achieve the two-state solution.
Now, sir, looking at the wider picture, in what ways can Egypt's position on Palestinian displacement shape future refugee policies in the Middle East?
It establishes a fact that no one, that Egypt is saying, and also Jordan as well, that no one should accept the idea of displacing the Palestinians into their lands, accepting them as permanent refugees. Because, and this even was pointed out by the president before a few months ago during a function that he held, His Excellency held at the Cairo Stadium in support of Palestine, when he said that the core difference between Palestinian refugees and other refugees who come from countries like Libya or Syria or even Ukraine or any other country in the world or in the Middle East, they someday will go back to and Sudan, they will go back to their countries when the conflict ends. The difference in Palestine is refugees, when they are kicked out of their own countries, they never are allowed back in by the Israeli occupation. We have seen that in 1948. In 1948, 700,000 Palestinians, over 50% of the native Palestinian people of Palestine, were forcefully displaced by the Zionist gangs and militias back then, the Haganah and the Aragon, and they were never allowed back to this day. In 1967, 200,000 Palestinians were kicked out of the West Bank and Gaza. They were never allowed back to Palestine until today. So Egypt will not allow, and the Palestinian people as well, will not allow the repetition of this of this crime against humanity and this crime against the Palestinian people and their unalienable rights. So I think that this is the precedent that Egypt and Jordan are establishing, and other Arab countries and all the countries in the world should follow suit by refusing to accept any American propositions to relocate Palestinians to other countries, because Trump before that said we can relocate 100,000 Palestinians to Albania, other Palestinians to Indonesia, and these propositions, all the countries that maintain a moral stance and a moral commitment to the Palestinian cause and to human rights in general should reject such propositions, and Egypt is now being a role model and leading the charge in rejecting the idea of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad Osman, for your insights and for all the information you provided us with. And now we're going to move back to Mark in the studio.
Thank you very much, Summer, and to you and your guests. Now, for further analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Osama Raslan, who's a legal linguist and a political analyst. Thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. So what significance does the gathering at Rafah crossing hold in the broader context of Egypt's stance on Palestinian displacement?
Thank you, Mark, for having me. Well, actually, it bears all the significance one would like to have or see whenever you want to send a strong message. Actually, we're talking about the general public, lay persons who are not necessarily politicians or statesmen and women or directly involved in politics by any means. We're talking about simple Egyptians, people who care for their lives, who care for their country, who care for their neighbors. They are there. From all social classes in Egypt, from different backgrounds, whether educational or economic or social. You can find their doctors, you can find lawyers, you can find engineers, architects, you can find farmers, you can find daily workers, etc. All of them declaring the same message. We do not accept any implicit threats to Egypt. We do not accept any proposition for the relocation of Palestinians. We stand strong behind the political leadership in Egypt and behind the government in Egypt. We do not accept any threats, whether it's explicit or implicit. And no one should ever be highlighting the aid being received by Egypt over the last decades or even in the future as a means of a leverage to pressurize us into a certain agenda. You know why? Because we're not talking about aid being delivered to Egypt, especially the U.S. aid since the Camp David or the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. We're not talking about simple aid here. We're talking about American investment. Actually, for every U.S. dollar granted to Egypt over the last 4 decades or so, the United States has already meant to claim 59 U.S. dollars for each $1 U.S. dollar given to Egypt. So this is investment. This is not aid. This is not grant. This is not donation. We're not talking about donations. We're talking about investment. So again, the simple stance is we do not accept any proposition that would derail the peace process as proposed since the Beirut summit and the Arab solution presented back then for a peaceful end to this conflict, which is the two-state solution.
And Dr.
Raslan, demanded, I mean, Egypt and Jordan is specifically, were being demanded to offer a solution. Actually, we already highlighted the solution, the only solution possible, the two-state solution, living side by side in peace.
And going back to these demonstrations, you mentioned that these are normal, everyday people who have come out to show their feelings. How do these demonstrations at the Rafah crossing illustrate Egyptian public sentiment towards the Palestinian cause?
You know, for this part of the world, we have always seen the Palestinians as brothers and sisters. Egypt has adopted the Palestinian cause. Egypt has demonstrated has been leading the area, the whole region, by example, by providing a good example toward peace. We have concluded peace more than 4 decades ago. We are insisting on that path. We do not want any derailing from that path. So, again, we're talking about simple Egyptians who are there to show their strong commitment to the same stance, to the same Egyptian stance. We're not talking about a political stance by the Egyptian government. We're not talking about only a social stance by the Egyptian people. We're talking about one stance that is being demonstrated by Egypt, the whole Egypt, the president, the government, the general public. This is the same stance. We do not want any relocation of the Palestinians. By the way, we shouldn't be, I'm not talking about the Egyptians, of course. I'm talking about the international powers. I'm talking about the Israelis. I'm talking about the Americans. They shouldn't be talking about the Palestinians as if they are taken for granted. as if you're going to say, okay, 1 million Palestinians should be transferred to Indonesia, or 100,000 Palestinians should be transferred or relocated to Albania. No, we're talking about the people who have been pressurized under a genocide, nothing short of a genocide by the Israelis for like 15 months, and the people insisted on maintaining their land. But this is simply, they need to understand that we're talking about people, I mean the Palestinian people, who wouldn't give up their lands. It is their lands. They have been living there for thousands of years. It's either for the Israelis, if they want to remove the Palestinians from their lands, I believe they should continue their genocide if they want to remove the Palestinians from their land. The Palestinians have been proven inalienable. They cannot be relocated to anywhere. They maintain their inalienable rights to their land and for their independent state. This is the only solution for everyone in this region to live in peace. No other solution would prove possible either in the near future, medium future, or far future.
And are there particular historical reasons, perhaps, that might shape Egypt's current opposition to the displacement of Palestinians from Gaza?
Yes, sure. This is a matter of national security for Egypt for centuries and even for millennia. Whatever threats used to come to Egypt, they used to come from the northeastern gate. Besides, we're talking about the population of Gaza and the population of Palestine, and generally, they have so many relations, different relations with Egyptians and the other countries beyond, Syria and Jordan. You're going to find families that are being shared between the nationalities, the two nationalities or the three nationalities that I mentioned. You're going to find so many, blood relations, economic relations, social relations, historical relations. Some families are send their injured or their sons and daughters to study in universities and schools in Egypt, etc. So every kind of historical reason can be materialized if you look deeply into the close relations between Egypt and the Palestinians. Yes, you're going to find every reason, whether historical or present, for us to keep this stance, not only now, to continue to keep this stance that holds, that stands strongly behind the Palestinians and their inalienable rights.
And Egypt is a very diplomatic country when it comes to international affairs. How do these actions at Rafah serve as some kind of a barometer of its diplomatic stance?
Well, actually, we have been learning this line from Western politics. Everything is fair in love and war.
Yeah.
But actually, in politics, this also can be projected as a line of wisdom to politics. So we're sending simple people, those people who have been on roads from all over Egypt throughout the night, last night, to arrive at the Rafah crossing to show solidarity to the Palestinians and to show strong support to the Egyptian government's stance when it comes to this issue. Again, this is I wouldn't say it's a political stance. It's a moral stance before being legal or political. It's a moral stance. You will find Egypt condemning every act of invasion that might happen anywhere in the world. So it's a moral stance, and we do call on everyone who stand up for morals anywhere in the world to adopt the same situation if you're going to support Ukraine because it is being invaded. So Palestine is no less worthy of a cause of moral support and political support and economic support and the support on the international arena. So rights cannot be divided. We're talking about inalienable rights. We're talking about people who have the right to, the Palestinian people who have the right to self-determination. Every wise person in the world, everyone who is keen on keeping this region less volatile should push forward for the solution of the two states. Anything else would mean that this region would further slide into instability that everyone would pay for, would pay dearly for.
And what do you think Israel might make of the reaction of Egypt and the Egyptian people?
Well, actually, if any, let me put this clear more. If any country is to be feared here in the region by Israel, it should be Egypt. But we have, for decades now, as I told you before, for decades now, I've been keen on maintaining the peace treaty with Israel. We want to live in peace. We want security for everyone. We want peace for everyone. But this should be a two-way ticket. You cannot feel secure while you're oppressing others. You cannot feel peace or enjoy peace while others are being threatened by genocidal military efforts by Israel. So if you want peace, peace should be for everyone. If you want security, security should be for everyone. So Israel should not fear an Egyptian response if it is willing, really willing, to ensure peace in the region, to provide or to allow Palestinians to have their independent Palestinian states. And by the way, this is the Egyptian stance, official stance for decades now. And whatever details, they keep saying that the devil is in the details. Yes, but whatever details are there, they can be discussed. If you have security concerns, okay, let's state them and address them. The other option, or no other alternative, because the alternative adopted so far by the incumbent Israeli government is a genocidal effort against Palestinians, against simple, civil, unarmed Palestinians. We're talking about more than 50,000 slaughtered by the Israeli military machine over 15 months. Who accepts this anywhere in the world? It is unacceptable, and the blood of the Palestinians should be valued the same way the Israeli blood is valued, the same way Ukrainian blood is valued, the same way American blood is valued. Every human being is just, every human soul is so precious, too precious to be squandered anyway, and for political whims, as we can see by the Netanyahu government.
And Dr. Ruslan, how does the presence of these Egyptian delegations at Rafah shape Cairo's role in the larger diplomatic negotiations surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, I expect that if we keep hearing official statements by leaders, by maybe the U.S. president or Israeli officials or other officials, that would put more pressures on Egypt, I believe we're going to see more demonstrations on the street. There will be massive demonstrations that be counted in millions rather than tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. And this is this is how Egyptians act. For every single moment over recent history or across history, whenever Egyptians feel that their country is one way or another threatened, you're going to find them massing on the streets and chanting their stances and their slogans high and loud. This should be unmistakable. These should be unmistakable messages. They should be heard very well by the international community, particularly by the United States and Israel, because still we want peace. We do not want any further deterioration of the political situation in the region. We have had enough already. So let's think of actionable solutions that go hand in hand with the international law and with the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people.
Now, these developments and these concerns largely grew out of not just Netanyahu and his government's actions and words, but also Donald Trump talking about Gaza being cleaned out and cleared out of the Palestinian people. Egypt's very strong stance against those kinds of sentiments. How does it, and the situation now at Rafah, reflect the broader dynamics of diplomacy, both regional and, of course, broader diplomacy, especially with the United States?
Well, the United States, I mean, under the first Trump administration and now, along with Israel, they have been pressurizing so much for a normalization with Arab countries. Now, whatever they're thinking of when it comes to relocation, transfer, forced displacement of the Palestinians, just works the other way. No normalization can be expected or would be possible if you're going to simply think of removing one whole population, drive them off their lands to other countries. This is, I wouldn't say it is imperial, because even in imperial eras, I believe nothing at of such a magnitude has taken. So let's think of reasonable solutions. Reasonable solutions wouldn't at all involving the transfer or the relocation or forced displacement of Palestinians anywhere. They, whatever, and there are some pretexts of that we need to proceed with reconstruction efforts in Gaza, and that's why we need to move Palestinians to somewhere else until the construction efforts are finished or completed. And this would be on a temporary basis. Actually, let me tell you something, and your viewers, let me tell you something about the Israeli dictionary. The Zionist Israeli dictionary, if you're going to use the word temporary or provisional, they mean permanent. If they mean peace, then they mean subjugation. So nothing of this is acceptable.
Yes.
Either to Egypt or to the Egyptian people, or even the Palestinian people.
Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Q News. Thank you for your insights, Dr. Osama Raslan, legal linguist and political analyst. Thank you for joining us. So this was live coverage of Egyptians gathering in front of Rafah Crossing, expressing their rejection and denouncing calls to displace Palestinians. Stay with us as our coverage continues.
Egypt has consistently opposed Israeli demands for the displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, particularly amid the ongoing humanitarian crisis. This stance has been reinforced by both public demonstrations and official statements rejecting any form of forced relocation. Thousands of Egyptians gathered at the Rafah crossing to voice their opposition to any plans that would lead to Palestinian displacement. This public sentiment reflects a broader national consensus against using Egypt as a refuge for those fleeing the violence in Gaza. The protests highlight the dangers of addressing the Palestinian issue through displacement, drawing parallels to Egypt's historical experiences and concerns over national security and stability. Well, for more analysis, we're joined by Dr. Nurhan Sheikh, a political science professor. Dr. Nurhan, good evening, good afternoon to you, and welcome to Q News. And let me here ask you, what prompted the large public gatherings at Rafah crossing, and what do they reveal about the Egyptian societal position towards the Palestinian issue?
Good afternoon for you and for all who follow our program. Actually, the people of Egypt and also as well as the leader of Egypt were clearly condemn that initiative to displace the Palestinians. The millions actually of Egyptians want to express their opinions more and more than we are seeing now in TV. They are expressing the popular attitude in Egypt that we refuse totally the displacement of Palestinians, and they are supporting the historical and the legal rights of Palestinians for an independent state of Palestine. I think this is the time to push forward, all of us, to push forward the Palestinian state to see the light finally after 100 years or more of struggling toward that. I think this is the time, and it is clear that all people refuse, as well as the government, not only in Egypt but worldwide, and Jordan, Arab, everywhere they are refusing the displacement of Palestine.
You mentioned a very important issue, which is the historical developments in Egypt, or the historical incidents in Egypt. Now, how have the historical events in Egypt shaped public sentiment regarding the displacement of Palestinians?
Egypt and the Egyptians, the one who defend Palestine all over the history, since 40s, 1948, and along the 60s, 70s, we are the one who defend Palestine and defend it because it is Egyptian issue. It is not only a Palestinian or Arab matter. It is our national security, starting from Palestine, starting from Gaza. And we all, people as well as government, feeling responsibility toward Palestine issue. And there are, I think, legal status for that. Many Security Council resolutions defend Palestinian rights. So that is a historical, social, political matter in Egypt, and in every Egyptian actually have a lot of concern about Palestinians and the Palestinian state, Palestinian people. They are our brothers, sisters, and we are caring a lot about their future.
Now, Dr. Nurhan, how does Egypt's rejection of the Israeli demands align with its broader foreign policy in the Middle East?
We have a lot of doubts about Israel and what they are planning for. And those doubts now, they are not just doubts, but really fears and threats, real threats after the new American administration asked clearly for the displacement of Palestinians. So we considered a threat to national security of Egypt, a threat to the whole Middle East, because you say what happened in Syria and how Israel attacked Syria, attacked Lebanon. So I think most of people in Egypt think that it is not just Gaza or Lebanon or Syria. Once it will cover maybe the whole Middle East, and we will once also think about more or beyond Gaza and beyond Lebanon, beyond Syria. So it is they are real threats to our national security, our national interests, and for the stability and security of the Middle East. And I will not. It is not. It is really a threat to maybe the global security as a whole.
Now, how has the Egyptian role played in mediating between Israel and Palestine influenced its stance on the displacement issue?
Egypt playing very important role in negotiations, and a huge effort Egypt paid in negotiation, not only now, since 70s actually, and Egypt trying to mediate and to facilitate negotiation and to push forward settlement, some kind of settlement, fair settlement to the Palestinian issues. But the problem always was the Israeli side, who actually didn't pay that much flexibility and to accept the Palestinian rights. They have their own plans, maybe some fundamentalists there pushing forward to some unacceptable solutions. The displacement is totally rejected and totally unacceptable. And the Israeli government and those who are pushing forward such ideas should recognize that no one in Egypt and in Arab world, and I think most of the whole world, will not accept that. And Egypt is trying and doing a huge effort to reach a fair settlement ended by an independent Palestinian state.
Now, let me here ask you, do you think from your point of view the U.S. shifts in its foreign policy would really impact Egypt's position towards accepting Palestinian refugees?
Yes, to some extent. The new administration, I think, is going far beyond what...
No, do you think that Egypt would be impacted or affected by the position or the shifts of the U.S. foreign policy? Do you think Egypt's position would change?
No, I think His Excellency, the President of Egypt, mentioned clearly and declared that no way, Egypt will not accept the displacement of Palestinians, not only because our interest or our national security, but we are concerned a lot about the future of Palestinians and the future of Palestine state. So we cannot accept that for the Palestinians and for the interest and the future of all Palestinian people and the authority. If we accept that, it would be the end of Palestine state. No one can imagine a Palestine state without Palestinians, without land. So simply it will be an end of that. Egypt cannot participate in such a crime because all generation nowadays and in the future will examine and will charge, even charge the people who are agree about that. So I think it is totally not acceptable, and it was really declared openly and clearly by His Excellency the President of Egypt.
Now, speaking about the humanitarian aspect, from your point of view, what could be the humanitarian consequences of forced displacements of Palestinians for both the Palestinians themselves and the Egyptians as well?
We all follow how horrible it is in Gaza. Nothing, no electricity, no water, no places, no homes, no roads. It's a total disaster. I don't know how people, how Palestinians can live in such a horrible situation. Egypt trying to add and to give hand to them by facilitating the aid from Egypt and from other countries to enter Gaza. But I think they need a lot, and they still need more and more aid. And the most important thing is to maintain the ceasefire. This is very important now. Without maintaining ceasefire and giving some stability, some security, it will be more and more horrible for Palestinians. And we are, by a way or another, not only Egyptians, the whole world is responsible for that, and should doing something to stop Israel from attacking innocent people and to provide such secure environment for renovation and for rebuilding what Israel destroyed.
Now, from your point of view, how is Egypt balancing its humanitarian responsibilities with the national security concerns in addressing the Palestinian crisis?
I think it's clear, obvious that Egypt is the main gate for all aid from Egypt and from other countries. Most of the aid is going through Rafah, and Egypt is the one who facilitates that. Egypt also the one who restore the crossing borders, etc., to be able to facilitate aid. So Egypt recognized that it is, by a way or another, it is a life or the corridor life for Gaza. And without the help of Egypt, the situation will be more and more complicated for Palestinians. But still, as I told you, Egypt doing a lot, and huge effort. But we need the rest of the world, and then we need the rest of Arab countries also to give hands in that. Otherwise, that horrible period will continue or will last for some time.
You said give a hand. What exactly would can be the international support that Egypt can seek to address the Palestinian humanitarian needs without resorting to displacement, from your point of view? And what kind of pressures do we need from the international community?
Actually, it is many things are required from the international system and from the other countries. First of all, UNRWA. Why they stopped the UNRWA activities in Gaza. It is very highly needed that UNRWA backing to its activities and what it was doing in Gaza is very great, is very important. So UNRWA is very needed to back to Gaza and to give them some freedom and many support to in their work. Plus, also to give a clear message to Israel concerning continue and maintaining a ceasefire agreement, because unfortunately within Israel there are many voices who are calling to back to fight, to back to war, to end the ceasefire, etc. It is very important for the whole world to support and to stand against any break to ceasefire agreement and to end by a whole settlement. Lasting peace. This is also very important. Plus, the quantity of humanitarian assistance. Yes, what is going on huge, but Palestinians need more and more to be able to recover and to be able to live. And in such a situation, everything is totally destroyed in Gaza, and that need more and more millions of tons of assistance from different kinds, medicine, food, materials or resources needed for infrastructure. Everything is needed in Gaza, and I think that is required from all countries and all countries who are keen in a lasting peace in the Middle East in general.
If I may ask you here about the pressures that we've been speaking about of the international community, what's your take on the international community putting pressures on Egypt to accept the displacement issue, while not pressuring Israel to stop its aggression on Palestinians?
It's double standard. We used that long ago. That unfortunately the West have usually having such double standards. And I think the European countries, many of them, changed their attitudes a lot toward the displacement and toward the Palestinians' problem. But still, the problem in the United States and the new administration, which is trying to pressure Egypt and Jordan by all means to accept the displacement. They have their own plan to the region and to Gaza in particular. But those plans will not, by any way, will not be achieved in the cost of national security of Egypt and in Arab national security in general.
If I may speak about Egypt's rejection to the Palestinian displacement, the Egyptian rejection of Palestinian displacement align with its national security interests. What's your comment on that?
Because we are the first will be suffer from that displacement in many ways. Yes, we are defending mainly by refusing and rejecting displacement. We are defending Palestine, but we are also defending our national security priorities, because if we accept Palestinians on our land, it means as we are giving Israel part of our land, and this is not acceptable. Plus, I don't, and many others think that Palestinians will not stop fighting toward their rights. So what will happen that you are moving the war in Egypt? Sinai would be the place of war instead of Gaza. So we didn't do anything. We didn't ensure the peace, and we just moving the battlefield scene from Gaza to Sinai and involving Egypt in that. We are trying to respect peace agreement between Israel and Egypt, and we are keen about keeping peace with Israel. The displacement, I think, will threat the that agreement, and will maybe lead to, by a way or another, some kind of war or struggle between the two sides. So it's a danger from many aspects, and I think we will not by any way accept that displacement for the good of Palestinians and also for the good of Egypt.
Yes, that was Dr. Nourhan Sheikh, a political science professor. Many thanks for you for joining us here on Q News, and that concludes our special coverage for now. Egyptian firm stance against Palestinian displacement highlights broader regional concerns. Stay tuned for more coverages coming up.